of her face looks like it's disintegrating.
I was grasping at straws, trying to figure out what was wrong with her.
There was no denying it. I knew that my face was sinking in.
That's when the panic really struck me.
My biggest fear is that I'm gonna lose my wife.
Jim never left Mandy's side. He would lose his best friend.
Next, two medical mysteries that defied the experts. When 13-year-old Nicole Beavers starts to slowly lose her hair, no one takes much notice, until the entire right side of her face begins to literally cave in.
I was terrified, honestly. I was completely terrified.
Then, Amanda Gray's seemingly ordinary life is turned completely upside down when a terrifying disease causes her body to begin wasting away.
At that point, I had to go and tell my family that I might not live through this.
We look at the doctors for what they can't. If diagnosis is a mystery.
In the summer of 2004, 13-year-old Nicole Beavers is living in Laurel, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. She's happy, healthy, and without a doubt, the apple of her mother's eye.
She was my everything. She had long blonde hair, big blue eyes, chunky little cheeks. She was absolutely a gorgeous little girl.
I enjoyed going to school to see my friends. I was in double dutch. I was in the step team. I did drama.
But life for Nicole and Joni has never been easy. Joni was still a teenager when she had her daughter, and soon found herself raising Nicole on her own.
Joni didn't like to leave Nicole, but she had to work because she had to put a roof over Nicole's head. So she did what she had to do. May not have been the best situation to be in, but Joni tried.
My father was in and out of my life. I've learned how to handle disappointments a lot easier than other people. So I just picked myself up as much as I could and moved on. I really didn't tell people or say anything. I just left it alone and kept on.
By the time Nicole enters middle school, her mother is working long hours as a bar manager to make ends meet.
I would work 10 to 14 hours a day. Some days you'd have to pull doubles. It was very challenging for me.
You know, we're not rich, so she had to work those type of hours to get the money that she has in order to provide for me what she needed to provide.
Amanda had just graduated college when she met Jim Gray in the summer of 2003 at a nightclub in Tampa, Florida.
I was 22, and it was pretty much love at first sight.
The new couple soon finds a house, and Amanda quickly becomes like a second mother to Jim's 5-year-old daughter, Skylar.
I have a daughter from a previous relationship. They hit it off immediately, like two peas in a pod.
In April of 2005, Jim and Amanda marry, and soon after welcome their son James into the family. Just a year later, the young mother gives birth once again to a daughter they name Jaylee.
I definitely always wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to have kids, and, you know, it happened pretty much the way that I would want it to.
While their circumstances are far from ideal, mother and daughter always seem to find a way to get by. But then one morning, in the fall of 2005, something disturbing begins to happen.
I was washing my hair. As I was shampooing it, I started to just see my hair is falling out a lot. It's coming in clumps.
I didn't know what was wrong with her. They were perfect circled bald spots.
Alarmed, Joni keeps Nicole out of school the next day and takes her straight to the family doctor.
The pediatrician examined her head and told me it was nothing but her nerves. If she calmed down, it would grow back.
I thought the stresses that he was referring to were school, my father popping in and out of my life, She's like, just give it a little bit of time. And I was like, okay, nothing's wrong with me. The doctor said so.
But over the next 3 months, Nicole continues to mysteriously lose her hair.
It went from one bald spot to the second one. And then all of a sudden, I had 7. I was very self-conscious about it. It was overwhelming. I was confused. I'm like, I must be stressed trying not to be stressed.
Horrified by the glaring bald spots, Joni and Nicole returned to the doctor.
The pediatricians said that it was nothing, not to worry about it. I figured it was just the normal stress of a teenage girl.
Eventually, Amanda quits her job as a medical lab manager to become a full-time mom. She loves spending time with her kids, but soon after Jaylee's birth, she begins to feel unusually run down.
In January of 2008, I felt a lot of fatigue. And at the time, I didn't know if it was that I had 3 kids, and like any other mother, I was just very tired.
Amanda tries to get as much rest as she can, but it isn't long before a mysterious symptom emerges.
It just felt like my joints couldn't move. That they had become so stiff and just almost stone-like. And it was very, very painful to even pick up my children. And it frightened me that I could possibly drop them.
There were times when she would tell me that she had a hard time, opening this or doing that.
Never one to grumble, Amanda does her best to grin and bear it. Until a week later, when she wakes up with an alarming new complaint.
My neck was very, very sore on the left side. It felt very stiff. It hurt to move it, almost like I had sprained it. And when I went to go feel my neck, it had developed swollen lymph nodes.
Not wanting to take any chances, Amanda makes an appointment with her general practitioner for the next day.
She went over my joints to see if there was any swelling and see if it started to affect any other joints in my body, checking the swollen lymph nodes and the nodules in my neck. She was thinking it was mono, so we definitely were listening to the doctor and felt that that's probably what it was.
Mononucleosis, often called the kissing disease, is a virus transmitted through saliva. But there's no specific therapy available, as antibiotics don't work against viral infections.
She gave me anti-inflammatories because she was hoping that that would help. If there was any swelling, that would help ease the pain a little bit.
She certainly didn't want any concern to be relayed to her family. But I think at 27, she was very concerned that this may have been something else.
I think she probably forced herself to get up, and do things and try not to look sick. She doesn't like being the victim.
Nicole does her best to live with the continuing hair loss, covering her bald spots with hats and scarves. But as time goes by, the embarrassing problem begins to impact every facet of Nicole's life.
Anybody with teenagers know they have fire-quick tempers. There was more arguing. There was more fighting. There was more of the crying on her side and more of the anger. She was just angry at everyone. She would stay in her room a lot.
Then, on an ordinary January morning in 2006, Nicole is overwhelmed by a strange and frightening new symptom.
It was like a sharp shooting pain on the right side of my face. It was very, very, very painful. I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, we gotta go to the doctor, something is wrong.
Worried, Joni takes the day off to drive Nicole to the urgent care clinic. And the on-call doctor who examines her has a strong hunch about what's triggering the excruciating pain.
He told me that it could be migraines.
They would tell me to give her either aspirin or ibuprofen. And that was how we dealt with that.
But nothing they try seems to help. The next 2 weeks crawl by in slow motion, as the stabbing pain takes on a life of its own.
I started having a difficult time opening my mouth. It just 100% ached. It just felt like there were bolts inside of my jaw.
Suspecting that the pain in Nicole's jaw could be coming from her teeth, Joni schedules an emergency appointment with their family dentist.
They did the x-rays. Her teeth were overlapping. They were very compacted. They told me they could not do anything for her until she turned 16. She had to have her next growth spurt before they could do anything, and then they would start to remove some of the teeth that were compacted.
Now there's nothing Nicole can do but grin and bear it. To keep her mind off the pain, she does her best to concentrate on school and friends.
I tell myself all the time, everything will be okay. I am strong. I told myself, I'm very resilient. I will get through it all.
Then, one evening, as she's getting ready to go out with some friends, she notices something odd about her mouth.
I started putting, lip liner on, and as I would put the lip liner on, I would see my lips were not straight.
But when Nicole complains to her mother, Joni just chalks it up to a case of teenage self-consciousness.
My mom would say stuff like, that's normal. Every person finds something that they think is an imperfection on their body, and I don't see that.
I don't think any normal girl is very confident about their body at that age because you're growing, you're developing. I would tell my daughter she was beautiful.
Over the next few days, Amanda does her best to keep it together. But things soon take a dramatic turn for the worse.
One night I just was feeling really, really bad, and I started to get chills. And so I took my temperature, and at the time it was 101. And probably about 4 hours after that, my fever shot up to 104. And I think that's when the panic really struck.
It's probably one of the scariest moments of my life. I definitely had to monitor. I set an alarm clock for, every 4 hours. I gave her her pills, kept her for about a week fighting that fever, and they just kept saying, it should go away, it should go away. But it didn't.
After 7 days of dangerously high fevers, incapacitating soreness, and strangely swollen lymph nodes, Jim decides it's time for a more drastic course of action.
I made her go to the emergency room. I figured if you're at the emergency room, they're going to test you for more in depth than the doctor would. And I was just scared. I couldn't get there fast enough.
Nicole does her best to ignore it, but it isn't long before the shooting pain in her jaw takes a sudden and alarming turn for the worse.
The pain was excruciating. It would have me in tears. I wouldn't eat for days. I would just not eat.
Nicole begins losing weight, at first slowly, but soon the weight is melting off at a staggering rate. By the end of the summer, Nicole has dropped more than 30 pounds.
I got scared, I really did. I wasn't exercising, I wasn't dieting.
Suddenly, it's all too clear that something is very wrong.
As the months went by, I started noticing my face sinking in. I was terrified, honestly. I was completely terrified.
And when Nicole's godmother, Katie, comes to visit in August, she can hardly believe her eyes.
She opened the door, and I just looked at her. It was just such a difference. I see this child in front of me, and half of her face looks like it's just disintegrating.
I knew something was wrong, that I needed help, that I was not like everyone else, that there was really something wrong with me.
But her mother, Joni, seems completely unaware of any change in Nicole's appearance. In fact, with Joni always working and Nicole holed up in her room all the time, the two have hardly seen each other.
Joni was in denial that there could be something wrong with Nikki. Nicole is her daughter, whom she loves unconditionally no matter what she looks like, and sometimes people just don't see what they need to see.
But one morning, Joni finds herself leafing through the family album, and it's as if the truth is literally staring her right in the face.
At that moment, it finally hit me that there was something wrong with my daughter. I was very disturbed, very upset. I didn't know what was wrong with my child. I want her to get help more than anything else.
Joni told me she was scared. She didn't know how to get Nikki the help that Nikki needed. She took Nikki to several doctors. They went for second and third, fourth, fifth opinions.
And nobody could give me an answer. I was grasping at straws, trying to figure out what was wrong with her. I felt horrible and helpless. There was nothing I could do for my daughter.
They brought me in pretty fast. They did some more blood work. They did some general chest x-rays to check for pneumonia. And they gave me some acetaminophen to help bring down the fever.
A few hours later, the results of Amanda's blood test come in, and doctors aren't too surprised with the findings.
My diagnosis was lymphadenitis, and that's all they had said at the time.
Lymphadenitis is an inflammation of the lymph nodes, often associated with a viral infection. The inflamed lymph nodes can be all over the body or localized to one region. Symptoms usually include fatigue and high fevers. The doctor explains that there's no specific treatment for the condition. Amanda will just have to let the infection run its course.
When I left the hospital, I was very angry and very frustrated. I didn't know how I was going to take care of my children or what was going to happen to me.
Over the next week, Amanda's frustration only grows as she gradually loses her appetite and begins dropping weight at a startling pace.
You could see her ribs, you know, when she would take her shirt off. I mean, her bones would stick out. She looked unhealthy.
I knew that I was starting to lose weight. You could see it in my face, definitely my cheekbones and my collarbone.
She was convinced that there was something wrong with her, and it just seemed like the doctor wasn't taking her very seriously.
Unwilling to watch his wife simply waste away, Jim insists that she go back to her primary care physician. Shocked by Amanda's dramatic weight loss and the persistent series of debilitating symptoms, the doctor immediately orders a new round of blood work.
I thought he would definitely give me an answer, and then I'd be able to come home and maybe have some magic cure for what was wrong. But that's not the way it went.
When the findings come in, it's clear that Amanda's white blood cell count is lower than ever. It's a sobering turn of events, as dropping blood levels are often indicative of cancer cells.
Due to my symptoms and the way my blood work came out with the low platelets and blood counts, they felt that I could possibly have lymphoma or leukemia. It's definitely a state of shock. And I definitely didn't think at 27, when I just had kids, that I would be dealing with a diagnosis like cancer. In my mind, it was a definite, I have cancer, I have to go through all these things, and what am I gonna tell my kids, and you know, what kind of treatments am I gonna have? They wanted to admit me immediately into the hospital.
I can remember driving there as fast as I could, on the phone with her. You know, she was crying hysterically and saying, you know, I have cancer, you know, what am I gonna do? You know, how could this happen to me?
To me, I was a child, and I was like, I'm just deteriorating, basically. I'm falling apart. I don't know what's going on. It's just everything's going wrong.
At school, the situation soon becomes intolerable, as Nicole is forced to endure uncomfortable stares and a near constant stream of embarrassing questions.
School was very depressing to me. It was very stressful. I'd have people stare at me. I would hear people say, oh, she got in a car accident. I had to start wearing my hair over my face the way, you know, like this. It would be down where no one could see me. We'll see this side of my face. I told my mom, you know, I hate going to school.
She thought she looked horrible. She didn't want anyone to see her. It's heartbreaking to watch your child crumble in front of you.
By September, Nicole has reached her wit's end, and the 16-year-old makes a very difficult decision.
I just couldn't deal with it at all. Legally, you can drop out of school at the age of 16 without a mother or a parent at all. So I walked in, I signed out. The day that I signed out, I registered to take my GED.
But while she's no longer subject to the scrutiny of her classmates, there's no escape from the pain in her jaw, which just keeps getting worse.
Nikki told me that the pain was excruciating and it was constant and it never stopped, and it felt like somebody was constantly pounding on her face.
Everything was strange because it was all happening on the same side, on the right side of my face.
Hoping that the dentist can help with the pain, Joni schedules another appointment. But x-rays reveal a shocking turn of events. Nicole's face has sunk in so much, her teeth are literally moving out of place.
Two were actually so far out of alignment that one was pushing into the other, making the one push into the side of my jaw. I didn't know what to think. My reaction was, what next? Honestly, what next?
The dentist quickly determines that Nicole has no choice but to undergo major oral surgery.
It was very upsetting. I wanted to just stop. I didn't want to go to doctors anymore, but I knew I had to if I wanted an answer to something.
At the end of her rope, Nicole reluctantly agrees to a preliminary examination with oral and maxillofacial surgeon, Dr. George Grione.
I went through Nicole's past medical history, and we did a thorough x-ray evaluation of the situation.
Dr. Grione examines Nicole closely, and it's not long before he spots the critical clue.
I noticed that her face was asymmetrical. I had an inclination that there was something else going on here, more than just pain in the upper right side of her mouth.
He glanced up, cocked his head, and looked at Nicole and said, "Do you know what you have?" And Nicole said, "No." And at that point, I kind of scooched up on my chair like, oh my God, you know what's wrong with her.
Terrified by the possibilities, Amanda bravely checks herself into the hospital, and the doctor promptly orders a battery of tests to confirm his hunch.
They started doing test after test after test. I had x-rays done. I had some CAT scans done. They also set me up for a lymph node biopsy and a bone marrow test. I remember Jim walking with me down to the surgery room and just being very scared about just what they were going to find.
She was crying and tears were just streaming down her eyes, and she's saying, what am I going to do? Yeah, it breaks your heart.
Jim never left Mandy's side. He just embraced it to the point of it was. He would lose his best friend.
The worst thing that I was thinking at that point was that I might not have that long to live if the cancer had spread, and I figured that I probably did have cancer, but to what extent?
Then, after 6 agonizing days in the hospital, one of the key test results finally comes in.
I did get the bone marrow biopsy test back, and the results came back negative. It gave us a little bit of hope, but we were still waiting for the lymph node biopsy. And they allowed me to go home to be with my kids until the oncologist called to give me the biopsy results.
For the last 3 years, Nicole Beavers has endured a constellation of bizarre symptoms that no one can explain. She has agonizing pain in her jaw, and to her horror, the entire right side of her face is literally caving in. Now, oral and maxillofacial surgeon Dr. George Grione has finally figured out why.
Based on the symptoms that Nicole presented with, I diagnosed her with Parry-Romberg syndrome.
Parry-Romberg syndrome is a rare disorder in which patients experience slow, progressive degeneration of half their face. In healthy individuals, the tissue and muscles of the face are nourished by a continual flow of blood. But in patients like Nicole, doctors believe that the nerves are impaired, preventing blood flow and causing the bone, muscle, and tissue of her face to atrophy.
If there is not enough blood flow to the area, basically that area of your body is malnourished, and so it starts to atrophy or disappear. And it gets smaller and smaller. The bone decalcifies and the soft tissues waste away. The skin becomes thinner and thinner. At this stage, on the right side of Nicole's face, it was much like a balloon that had been stretched over bone.
I was confused because I didn't know what it was. I was very angry. I was very sad.
It's difficult for the patients because they're seeing their face disappear before their eyes. This is our presentation to the world. We talk to people, we interact with people. Everything we do is on a face-to-face basis. And psychologically, socially, everybody wants to be normal.
I felt relief in some way because there was a name. Now you can build off that name.
A week later, Amanda is at home holding on by a string when her oncologist calls her with the lymph node biopsy findings. It's a day she will never forget.
He actually told her she had the most aggressive form of lymphoma he had ever seen.
What ran through my mind was if it's spreading through my lymph nodes fast, it can spread through my body even faster.
Lymphoma is a type of blood cancer that occurs when lymphocytes, white blood cells that help protect the body from infection and disease, begin behaving abnormally. They may divide faster than normal cells, or they may live longer than they're supposed to. But regardless of the irregularity, lymphoma can be a potentially deadly form of cancer. But before she starts chemotherapy, the doctor does his due diligence and gets a second opinion on the lymph node biopsy from an out-of-state specialist. But when the analysis comes back a week later, it's more shocking than Amanda could have ever imagined.
The doctor called me and suggested that it could possibly be something completely different than lymphoma. I think his mind was spinning as much as ours was.
All of Nicole's bizarre symptoms can be traced back to Parry-Romberg syndrome. Dr. Grione believes the first sign of it came when Nicole was 13 and began losing handfuls of hair.
The theory is that the nerves decrease the blood supply. If we don't have blood supply to an area, the hair won't grow.
As the disease progressed, Nicole began to actually feel the effects of an insufficient blood flow to her jaw.
She had a lack of development of the upper jaw on the right side. Therefore, her teeth were crowded. They were also misshapen, all of which can lead to severe pain in that area.
It's a relief to Joni and Nicole to finally have a diagnosis, but they can't help but wonder how so many of their doctors failed to grasp the severity of the problem.
It's a very rare disease, and we really don't know the incidence of it at this time. It's a diagnosis that's based on the symptoms that present themselves. There is not, at this stage, a lab test one can take. We can't send blood in. We can't do other tests that normally we often do in medicine.
Unfortunately, there is no cure for Parry-Romberg syndrome.
Being able to give a patient a diagnosis and offering no cure is a frustrating
The
situation.
oncologist offers to continue working with Amanda, but after the misdiagnosis, she's lost confidence and wants someone new. Then, while searching through medical directories one night, Amanda comes across Dr. Lubomir Sokol, a hematologist who specializes in rare diseases.
She obviously wanted to know what was going on with her, what type of disease she has. Was really a diagnosis correct?
As a first step, Dr. Sokol meticulously reviews the entire medical history. Then, Amanda shares some new information that stops the doctor dead in his tracks.
Probably a week before I had my visit with Dr. Sokol, some of my symptoms were starting to go away. My fever was not spiking as high, and my lymph nodes were gradually starting to get smaller.
Dr. Sokol knows that this new development can only mean one thing: He immediately reviews Amanda's previous lymph node biopsy results, hoping to confirm his hunch.
The lymph node showed significant area of necrosis. Necrosis is like dead tissue.
The dead tissue signifies that the body is essentially attacking itself and may be evidence of an autoimmune disorder.
Immune cells which protect us from viruses and also from cancer cells multiply significantly in lymph node. They can be toxic. They can kill our good immune cells, or they can kill our normal tissue and cause damage.
Upon further inspection of the biopsy report, he spots another crucial clue: a number of very specific white blood cells called crescentic histiocytes.
Histiocytes are type of white cells which infiltrate tissue. They participate in immune processes, but some of them can also work as scavenger cell. They go to the areas where they can see necrosis.
Dr. Sokol also notes an extremely low level of neutrophils, another type of white blood cell. Neutrophils help kill and digest alien cells in the body.
What is interesting is absence of neutrophils, because anywhere where you have a lot of dead tissue, neutrophils come and invade that area.
This fact makes one thing clear. While Amanda's white blood cells are behaving badly, they are not cancerous, and she does not have lymphoma. However, the combination of low neutrophils and a high crescentic histiocytes count helps Dr. Sokol confirm Amanda's diagnosis.
All these features led us to a diagnosis of Kikuchi-Fujimoto disease.
Kikuchi-Fujimoto disease, or KFD, is an extremely rare autoimmune disorder that often assaults the lymph nodes. In patients like Amanda, the immune system simply goes haywire and begins attacking itself, ultimately killing off both the lymph node tissue and the neutrophils designed to protect it. Research suggests that in response, the body starts producing crescentic histiocytes like crazy in an attempt to fight off what it believes is an alien infection.
Unfortunately, we still don't know what is cause of a disease, but definitely we know that Kikuchi-Fujimoto disease can cause enlarged lymph nodes, fevers, can cause weight loss, and so forth. There is a lot of dead tissue, necrosis in lymph nodes, which can lead to systemic symptoms.
Dr. Sokol goes on to explain that Amanda's other symptoms of joint pain and fatigue were also a direct result of her damaged lymph nodes.
I think I was a little shocked that I had something so rare, but I think very relieved because it was so much better than lymphoma that I was thrilled that it was anything but cancer.
The good news is Kikuchi-Fujimoto disease is not life-threatening. Ironically, the greatest danger patients face is unnecessary treatments.
This chemotherapy can cause mutations in bone marrow, and later, 20, 30, 50 years later, she could develop acute leukemia.
I was very relieved that I did not have to go through chemotherapy. I was relieved that within a couple months I would be back to my normal self without having to go through anything.
Grateful to finally have a solid diagnosis in hand, Amanda can't help but wonder why none of her many doctors could pinpoint the origin of her symptoms.
I think in any patients like that who present with enlarged lymph nodes, you have to always think about a lymphoma. Another reason is that this disease is extremely rare and not everybody is familiar with this condition. 50 to 80% of all cases described in literature came from Asian countries.
While Dr. Sokol cannot say exactly why Amanda mysteriously came down with Kikuchi-Fujimoto disease, he is confident that she can be treated and will eventually recover.
You can relieve their systemic symptoms with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Rarely, patients require treatment with corticosteroids. Prognosis is excellent.
When she got that diagnosis, it was like, oh my goodness, however rare this is, you know, we've been blessed.
A big weight was lifted. Everything you were afraid you were going to lose just got handed back to you.
While there's nothing Dr. Grione can do to reverse the atrophy in Nicole's jaw, her pain can be managed with prescription drugs. But what no one knows is how far the deterioration will go.
I was very scared, very worried about it. Who's to say that it's not going to start deteriorating the tissue and the muscle mass and the ligaments that go through the rest of her body on her right side?
It all hit me at once. Every emotion of mine came back to back and even felt like they were overlapping each other, coming at the same exact time. I was scared. I was terrified, actually. If your face is actually wasting away, what is going to be left of me? I was very worried. I was very confused over how it would affect the rest of my life.
16-year-old Nicole Beavers has just learned that she has Parry-Romberg syndrome, a rare disorder that is destroying one side of her face. And to her disbelief, Dr. George Grione has told her that it's incurable.
I was frustrated, I was distraught, I was just completely a basket case almost.
But Dr. Grione assures her that there's hope for the future.
The disease seems to burn itself out or stop when the patients are in their late 20s, maybe early 30s, and then we underlook for reconstructive procedures. Unfortunately, we don't know why the disease stops.
I do hope to get reconstructive surgery. I've already looked into it. I've been sitting and waiting for the disease to stop.
We wait at least 1 to 2 years after we're sure there are no furthering symptoms of the disease. And then we look into restoring the patient's face to a normal anatomy as much as is feasible.
Dr. Grione's optimistic that cosmetic surgeons can ultimately bring Nicole's face back, close to what it looked like before.
I want her to be able to come back to being who she used to be. I pray for that every day.
But while Nicole will have to wait to undergo reconstructive surgery, she's fortunate to have received her diagnosis when she did.
Often what happens in patients who are undiagnosed, they may go through processes of hair grafting or tissue grafts are done to their face. Unfortunately, unless the disease has ceased, all those efforts are pretty much in vain. The process will continue to affect those tissues that are transplanted into that area, leaving the patient with a result that may even be worse.
Today, Nicole is 18 years old. She's passed her GED and is attending a local college.
I am pursuing a master's degree in criminal justice with a double major in business administration as well.
And while she doesn't know when she'll be ready for reconstructive surgery, she's made peace with the face that the world now sees.
She used to wear her hair cupped into her face to cover it. And every once in a while, she'd flip her hair up and say, "Today you get to see the evil twin." And she'd let her hair back down. That doesn't happen anymore. She doesn't hide that. She's not scared of it anymore.
And despite the many uncertainties that lie ahead, Nicole is determined to live her life in the present.
Nicole is my hero in every aspect of the word. She gets up every day. She battles this disease every day. She battles the stares and the questions that people have. I don't know anyone braver than she is.
I'm very hopeful for myself and for everyone else. I believe it is very important to raise awareness for Parry-Romberg syndrome because I want people to know that they're not by themselves. When people stare at my face, now I can educate.
Today, Amanda is fully recovered and has plunged back into life as a wife and mother. But the experience has changed her forever.
I think that it's definitely made my family a lot stronger and a lot closer, especially between Jim and I.
She is the same Amanda she was before with a little extra dressing, you know, just a little something extra in her spirit.
Mandy will say to this day, I cherish every day because tomorrow could be something different. And I think she truly believes that.
I think I definitely learned that I'm a pretty strong person when I want to be, and that you have to keep going no matter what. anybody else says to you.